So the next session is about decision-making, and decision-making specifically in relation to democracy and possibly even participatory budgeting. So without further ado, I'd like to invite this session's participants, Shu Yang Lin, who's a co-founder and re-architect from Taiwan, and Francesca Pick, who we heard from yesterday, and Richard Bartlett, who is a co-founder of Loomio, to come and talk about decision-making.
So hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting us. Me and my colleague over here from PDIS, from Taiwan, is over here today. And it's really a lovely chance to share with you about the story of Taiwan. So I'll start with a short introduction of what we are doing in Taiwan. And later on, I think there will be more presentation. Yeah. I am Shu Yang Lin. I am a re-architect of PDIS, which stands for Public Digital Innovation Space. And it's a decentralized organization in the central government of Taiwan. And we are working on open government from inside. So what we are working on is mainly about the big idea of prototyping future democracy. And I'd like to share some story from the story of now, in these 2 years after we entered the government of Taiwan, and the story of before. That's when some movement happened and when everything happened about these 20, 30 years. Okay, so let me start with a story of how we kickstarted a redesign of a tax reporting system in the Taiwanese government. And it's actually not our idea. It's an idea started from a designer, a UX designer called Qian, and he proposed an idea to redesign the tax reporting system in a petition website. And he literally on the title said, we have a deprecate, explosively user hostile tax reporting system. So the PO, or you can say participation officers in the Ministry of Finance, noticed this case and brought this case to one of the monthly meetings of PO Network. PO Network is a network we created from 2 years ago after we entered the government. We asked all the ministries to recruit 1 to 3 volunteers to work on open government. And in the end, we gathered 70 of them to work together, to collaborate with each other, and to co-create projects with the citizens. And every month, the POs will have a monthly meeting and decide what are the topics they will talk about for the next month. They will choose 3, and they will have a discussion in the PO network with Slido. Yeah. So in the workshop, we do this very collaboratively. We invited citizens to be in the workshop as well, and also public servants from different departments. And we also have the entire process live streamed and recorded over the internet. After the first workshop of this tax reporting redesign case, we decided that we need 3 more workshops, so we did so with all the public servants related to this topic, especially the public servants who are in charge of law and tax, and citizens who had experience with using tax reporting system before, and some facilitators and workshop conductors to help out the process. And after this discussion, we together co-create a design proposal with paper prototype, interactive prototype, and then in the end, web prototype, and then we deliver to the IT company. And this tool we used throughout the whole process is also a tool we curated over these 2 years. It's called Issue Mapping Instruction. In the beginning, we designed the first draft, the first prototype, and then we asked the POs, all the 70 POs, to co-create with us, and co-create with all the citizens as well over the 37 workshops we hosted already for the past 2 years. And this happened not because of we didn't do this in these 2 years only. It's actually based on years of involvement of democracy in Taiwan. Public participation in Taiwan has been evolved in several formats, from face-to-face to really deliberation over the internet. It has an interesting alignment with the advancement of technology. When technology arrived to Taiwan, democracy also evolved. 4 years ago, around 4 years ago, in 2014, there's a movement called Sunflower Movement. Students in Taiwan wouldn't bear with the unwillingness of MP to discuss about Surface trade deal we had with Beijing office. So that they broke into the parliament and occupied there for 22 days and conducted a real deliberation inside. And that time, there's a sense where people from the internet, people on the internet and people on the streets, people in the parliament or on the street, also outside the parliament, all have a sense, we all recognize that we need a platform to have rational discussion over social issues, at least in Taiwan. So we started to have this experiment that is called V-Taiwan. An experiment that prototypes open stakeholder consultation process for the civil society. It is an idea, actually, that time 4 years ago, proposed by a previous Minister of Cyberspace. She actually went to the hackathon of a civic tech community in Taiwan, the largest one called GovZero. And she went there and proposed an idea and said, we need to have a platform to allow the entire society to have rational discussion. And some hackers and programmers and designers saw that it's a very good idea and took the idea and implemented the site in 2 weeks. So V-Taiwan launched 4 years ago, and it started to evolve into different shapes. In the beginning, it was a website with lots of APIs just linking to the site. And then it started to have its own process for consultation. And by far, we have 26 cases discussed through this platform, and 80% of them has really caused into effective influence and got changed some regulations and laws through the parliament. In V-Taiwan, we use a tool called Polis quite often. If you heard of it, Polis is a tool that helps us, in a nutshell, to calculate what are the rough consensus with this same group over this issue. We use Polis when we have observed that when you use Polis, if you see there's a disagreement, you can really reply to it, but instead you can try to rewrite it. So we see a phenomenon where people try to rewrite each other's comments and to create a more neutral comment. And then we see, for example, in this case, when we try to regulate Uber, the group in the beginning was four groups, and then it became 2 groups in the end. And the report from Polis also gives you a nice visualization of how diverse the statements are. You can see in the end we have more consensus statements instead of diverse statements. So that's the story of Taiwan. And after we created V-Taiwan around 2 years ago, one of the core members who were also in the project was invited to be the digital minister without portfolio to be working for the government. And we created a team over there, and that's the team we're working at right now. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, folks. I'm only going to speak briefly, so I don't have any slides. But thank you is nice. That's good. Thank you for your attention. My name is Richard Bartlett. I come from New Zealand, so please forgive my poor English. I'm one of many co-founders of a software platform called Loomio, and Ollie asked me to come and talk a little bit about Loomio in the context of participatory democracy. And when I think participatory democracy, I think about a large-scale transformation of how we do society, how we do economy. I imagine everyone coming together to build shared understanding. I imagine new ideas coming from anywhere. I imagine us considering what everyone thinks before we make a big decision. I imagine a fundamentally new way of being in society that's not governed from the top down and is not governed by the people with the most wealth or the most guns. And my hypothesis is that for us to get to that future state that I think many of us sort of have some kind of feeling about, there's going to be some intermediary states. And the part that I'm interested in is, like, I would love to live in this decentralized society, but probably before we get there, we're going to have to decentralize our organizations and our institutions. And a lot of the work that I've been doing with Loomio is focused on really quite small groups of people, you know, so most Loomio groups are less than 300 people. And the hypothesis is if we can learn to run those small organizations more inclusively, more efficiently, on the basis of participation, equal voice, then we might have a more credible place to demand a more decentralized society. So for those of you who are not familiar with Loomio, I'll explain it very briefly, but I think software is a little bit boring to talk about on stage, so just if you want to know more, please do come and talk to me. I'm here today. So, and my colleague Nati is also here from Loomio. We both love to talk about Loomio, but not so much on stage. In simple terms, it's a discussion forum. So you have your group of people, your co-op, any kind of group that wants to do things inclusively. You have a discussion about a topic that's important to you, like policy or governance management. And there's the difference between Loomio and other discussion forums is that there are some facilitation features that help you guide that discussion to a productive conclusion. So it's really, really simple. Come and talk to me afterwards if you want to know more. So we started building that in 2012 after a big crew of us got involved with the Occupy movement and learned about this consensus decision-making thing, this face-to-face thing. And just because of the people we are and the context we're in, after being inspired by the collective decision-making process of Occupy, we decided we'd make some software. Now, in early last year, 2017, so kind of like 5 years into the project, I guess I started doing some design thinking and some user research and going, instead of starting with the solution, which is our cool piece of software that everyone should use, Nati and I started traveling around the world, meeting with all kinds of groups that are trying to do inclusion, they're trying to decentralize power. And we left the software to one side and said, what is hard about coming together as equals? What's hard when you try and work in a group without a boss? And over that last 18 months of traveling around all over the world and interviewing different people and hosting workshops with them, we've collected all these recurring patterns of what goes wrong and what you can do about it. So after lunch, we've got an hour and a half where we're going to share some of that. So if you want to know the detail, come there. The short version, though, that I can tell you is, like, if there was one piece, it really comes down to culture. And it's been really satisfying for me to sit here today and yesterday and hear people name it again and again. This collaborative culture is something that needs to be built. It's something we need to grow. We need to develop in it piece by piece. There's mostly what we find that groups are struggling with is a lack of empathy, a lack of care, or the distribution of care. There's one or two people in a group that are caring for everyone instead of everyone caring for everyone. There's a lack of listening. We need to learn how to listen. There's a lot of work that needs to go into developing and maintaining relationships. And you notice all of these qualities, they are, in the society we live in, they're traditionally coded as feminine attributes. And to me, that's the main obstacle to the kind of change that we want to see, is that the most important attributes that we need to develop have been coded as feminine, that is less important than building software and being smart and being loud and fast and strong. So, yeah, I'm not really sure precisely how do we translate that into a social movement for change, but after Francesca's talk, we've got a participatory game that might help us take a few steps along that way. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks a lot, Rich. That was a perfect transition to what I'm going to talk about. I'm working in the field of participatory budgeting but in the realm and the scope of organizations and less on the civic level, for exactly the reason that Rich mentioned of wanting to actually start within the organizations and the institutions that we're in before actually making a larger transformation in society. And so what I actually wanted to start with was this. I don't know, how does this make you feel? So this was something that I spent a lot of time with for quite some years. And it sort of has been a source of one of my biggest frustrations that really has led me to work on what I'm doing today. This is actually the budget of OuiShare Fest, a conference that we run a few years. And OuiShare is an organization that has values that really are around being collaborative in terms of decision-making and open and transparent. And so in terms of how we organized, I really wanted to include everyone in the team in decisions, including the financial decisions. And so many times I was in the situation being at a team meeting or being at an annual or biannual retreat with many OuiShare members, showing them things like this and getting these empty stares and almost like this petrified, like, we don't know what to do with this kind of reaction, which is totally normal. And it's clear that this is a very unengaging tool. So that's what actually led me to investigate more. How can we really say that we're trying to be collaborative and participatory in terms of decision making if we're not also including financial decisions, because they're actually so important, and in the end that actually can be super critical, even if it just seems like a small menial decision. Do we buy more materials with a certain amount of funds or not, for instance? So that's what actually led me to connecting more with Inspiral and a tool called Co-Budget that, similarly to Loomio, was also developed within the Inspiral ecosystem by lots of different developers that were sort of taking a practice that was being used in the collective and building a software tool that was helping make that more efficient. And so about a year and a half ago, I discovered the tool and realized that there was a lot of potential and wanted to see how this could actually help us start really like taking one little piece of opening up and making more engaging financial decisions. So Co-Budget is a collaborative funding tool, the way we sort of call it, and what it basically does is it helps groups allocate funds in a more collaborative and transparent way. As Rich said as well, I'm not going to go into the detail of how it works. It's sort of like an internal crowdfunding process where people can propose ideas and others can then decide how to put money onto them. But I just wanted to basically, share this as an interesting practice that we're developing and trying to really figure out how in different contexts can this be an interesting way of engaging people more, and what are the barriers to that. And what's really quite interesting, specifically talking to all of you who are working in co-ops, is that actually cooperatives is one of the most interesting applications of Co-Budget so far. Many of you have maybe chatted with Harry, who's here from Outlandish. They've actually been some of the most long-term users of Co-Budget that use it to allocate surplus among co-op members. So I think that that's a very interesting and encouraging example that for co-op specifically, this is an interesting step forward. This is just a screenshot, not that interesting. So yeah, what I wanted to leave you with is that I think there's a huge potential in this space, and that there's many different levels at which we need to actually do this work around how to make decision-making more inclusive. Another thing that I'm currently investigating is actually going more into the individual psychology of money, because that's also something that really comes to play when you're trying to do something like collaborative funding. And so this afternoon, I'm actually running a money game in one of the breakouts over at the Square Pig. I'm keen for anyone who'd like to join. I just wanted to let you know that you need to remember to bring your own money. And the way it works is you choose how much money you bring. The prompt is think about how much would actually give you a learning experience and make you feel something, but how much would also not be a big drama if you lose it. So that's the invitation. It's a good question to just think about, even if you don't join. And with that, we're going to go into our participatory game.
This is a game that you can play sitting down, so I'm going to sit down. And only play it if you want to. But I think it's going to help us. So to play this game, you need two things. You need an imagination and a human body. So if you're comfortable, and I'm comfortable, you can close your eyes. But if you prefer not to, just have your eyes maybe on the ground, somewhere fixed where you're not going to be distracted. Because you need your body and your imagination to be working. And maybe you can just take a moment to notice what's going on in your body, how it is in space, how's the physics, how's the gravity. Okay, so we're equipped. Now we engage the imagination. And somewhere in front of you, there's a really bright, glowing light. And it's warm. And somehow it's really comfortable. It radiates a really peaceful feeling. And in that warm, glowing light in front of you, you can see someone is coming towards you. And they look happy. As they draw closer to you, step by step, you realize that this is you from the future. This is you 10 years in the future. And while you're a little older, you're very happy. You're very content. You're very satisfied. And the two of you have a long conversation. You're chatting about the present. They're talking about the future. And they're so excited to let you know how everything all worked out so well. And because it takes so much energy to hold this future tunnel in place, we can't stay together very long. But future you gives you one piece of advice and says, just hold on to this one idea and know that everything is going to work out. And then they depart down that glowing tunnel. And you come back into your body in this space. And when you're ready, you open your eyes.
Great. So, now we're going to do a great little exercise that I love doing called 1, 2, 4, all. And we're going to let you share what you just experienced, what you just heard, and basically reflect on, based on what your future self just told you and the advice, what is it that you'd like to do now, or what is the action that comes out of that for achieving this future that might be related to your organization, to yourself, to society. So what I'm going to ask you to do is first to reflect for one moment just on this question and what you experienced. Then you're going to look for a neighbor or someone near you to chat for 2 minutes. And then after that, we're going to prompt you to find another pair and talk in groups of 4. And then after that, we're going to have some time for the different groups to share what you talked about and keep having the discussion. Does that sound good? Okay, so then 1 minute of reflection and we'll time you. So I'm going to teach you a very useful cultural technology that someone in the audience already started, which is great, that enables you to get a large room silent within seconds around corners, which is if someone lifts their hand, you have to raise your hand. You have no other choice. It is your reflex, and you have to close your mouth. So you cannot be talking and have your hand open like I am right now. That actually doesn't work.
We call it hands up, mouth shut.
Yes. Hands up, mouth shut is the short version. So now you're going to find your groups of 4, and I'm just going to invite you to be conscious of letting everyone share, and also try to really do active listening. So don't think about what you're going to say next, but just listen to what you're hearing, and then go around the circle. And so keep in mind also at the end to just think about what it is you might like to share back with the group in terms of this question around what is your action now in terms of getting to this future that you saw. 5 minutes?
I'll give you 5.
5 minutes seems good. Okay, so go into groups of 4.
So I'd like to ask some of the groups if you are really eager to share what you've heard, like what is the real insight, probably just learned yourself again. So anyone who really wants to share with the team? Thomas has got the microphone and he will hand it to you.
Above your head is the words "to thine own self be true," and I've been here several dozen times, and I've always found that quite inspiring, and maybe some others have as well.
Yay. Yeah. So you're to that.
What does that
mean?
Yeah, we had a slight problem with the warm glow coming towards us, which I think focused very much on the heat, and maybe gave some examples of, I guess, calm down, chill, that kind of stuff came to mind as well, as a kind of opposite to that warm, glowing ball.
I hadn't intended to say anything, but someone just put a microphone in my hand. My advice to me was that there are so many amazing things and possibilities and stuff that I'm getting involved with, and I really need to focus and do a fewer number of those things better.
Yeah. Awesome.
Can I ask a slightly different question? And instead of telling us what you discovered in yourself, can someone tell me something really great they heard from someone else?
Yeah, please go ahead and wonder later. Thanks.
Okay, well, I heard some women on the panel, because you referred in effect to the implicitly female qualities that perhaps we could all adopt more of, say that she felt that the advantage that women had was that they had a better understanding of reality.
Okay, there's a hand over there.
Hi, my name's Sophia. What I heard in our gathering was, the thing that seemed common to me was a visceral sense of trusting either something they'd gained from when this figure came through the very hot cloud. But it was different in each case. So one was kind of like being a bit more certain of the action, and the other was just trusting this sense of courage, but it had a kind of physical feel to it. That's what I heard in the group.
Okay, do we have one? We can take a few more. There are two.
Thank you. I hope I'll do justice to the conversation we had. It was interesting to see that depending on how advanced we were in our own time, we had different pieces of advice. You had people who had the change ahead of them, the people who had done the change, and the people who had done the change and probably even more. And it really changed what the advice was. One was, yeah, you can get the courage and go do it. The other ones were like, you're doing fine, keep on doing it. And then the other part was, well, you only have so much time left, so hurry up.
Okay, last one, I think. Yes, this gentleman.
I'm confused now. I think in our little group I was hearing a thread of not so much from the future, but actually being in the present, both a question of being aware and in the present, but also more of a questions rather than advice, and responding to questions here and now, and also maybe we're not going to be here for very long anyway. So a lot of resonance with the other groups as well.
Okay. So thank you so much.
There's another one back there.
There's one more? Yeah? Okay.
He's been here for a while.
Corner.
Yeah, one is the corner.
I think the people in my group are extremely hardworking, because two people said the same thing fundamentally. I've got to take a break sometime. I've got to have some time where I can enjoy myself and do things that I like to do. It's great doing all the things, all the stuff, but if it's work, you suddenly forget how to enjoy yourself. So, balancing in life, I guess.
All right. Okay. So it's nice to know our best mentors are actually ourselves in the future. And I hope you all enjoy this little participatory session we kind of come up with from last night. Yeah, in a bar particularly. Yeah, I really enjoyed this part too. So if you have any question, we have probably 5 more minutes to take any question, or if anyone just want to share some more with us, it's totally fine. Yes.
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest challenges we're seeing is actually ensuring that the groups have a healthy communication culture and tools, and the ability to actually have strategic financial reflection with a larger group of people. Because if you're not able to have that reflection, it's also very hard to translate that into specific financial decisions. And so one thing that specifically we actually experienced in Inspiral is that for a while in co-budget, we were doing lots of nice little decisions, but it was small things that we were spending money on, and it wasn't really solving the big problems of Inspiral, and that it was almost, we were forgetting about holding that space for really thinking about those difficult questions. So in a way, the financial decisions, they end up being sort of a good way to discover symptoms of pretty big topics that are usually looming within an organization. So you often open up a pretty broad field that you need to figure out how to tackle.
This gentleman over here.
Sorry, not a Slido or anything like that, so I'll try and speak up. It's that I've been involved in the East End of London in some experiments in participatory budgeting.
Sorry, do you want to wait for the mic? Just help people at the back here.
Sorry, so I've been involved in the East End of London in some experiments in participatory budgeting, which I'm very supportive of. You know, I think that this is, you know, it's a good start for the future. However, what I do feel is that some actual education is needed before people start actually participating in this. The reason I say this is that if you leave people to do it in the raw, dans la nature, is that people start voting in blocks for very well-defined self-interest, whereas what you need from them is actually a more awareness of what general interest might be. Sorry, this is more of a statement than a comment, but I just wondered whether you'd like to comment on that.
I can comment. That's precisely why I'm putting my energy into small-scale deliberation and participation, in the sense that, like, I want to live in this participatory future where everyone has control of the budget, but I want to live there with people who are experienced and educated and equipped, and it's very challenging, and so I think we need to practice. And so practicing in our co-ops and our neighborhood groups and our little community projects, I think, is equipping us to then be credible to take, you know, to take the reins of power and do something that's more than just self-interested, you know.
Yeah, I fully agree with that as well, and I think that that's why sometimes we try to actually design little mini barriers to entry to just communicate, well, not everyone can just participate. You have to say, oh, I want to be engaged, or I'm going to do the work to read up on things to try to understand. And I think for me, the guiding like star is sort of how can you make people really feel the trade-offs of that kind of decision making, and like really understand what are the things that I have to choose between. And I think that's actually the real challenge.
I'm really enjoying these moments of peace and quiet between the questions.
I have a dilemma. The dilemma is, although I am very heavily involved in using participatory trajectories within my co-op, there is a lot of need for leadership. I am invited all the time. I am the leader, actually. I'm so bossy. But the thing is that there's a limit to the development capacities of humans. And I want to include as many people as possible, but at the same time, a lot of people cannot think strategically or overcome the social dilemma. And we have to respect that. And my question, my dilemma is, am I wrong to take up the authority that is given to me, be it in a servitude kind of leadership, because of then creating a psychological safe environment for those who don't want to take any decisions, responsibilities, etc., etc.?
Yeah, it's a great question. Should I? Yeah. Go on. I think that there's sort of two sides to that. It seems to me that while, of course, I agree with you that we can't have everybody be in that sort of leading position of thinking strategically, there is already a huge step we can make in terms of having a larger understanding and literacy on what it means to make those decisions, so that if you're not stepping into them, you sort of have a better understanding of, like, it's almost like having more empathy with those types of decisions and what they imply, and therefore understanding if I'm asking for more budget that needs to get cut somewhere else. Like, for me, there's that's like, yeah, it's two different things, if that makes sense.
I can add, maybe to illustrate a bit why I say it's good to practice in small scale before making demands about the large scale. So, you know, in my early 20s, I had very simplistic ideas about how, yeah, everyone's the same and we can all do the same stuff, and if only we got the barriers out of the way, everyone would be participating in the same way. And then, yeah, I started an organization and joined a network of organizations and realized just how much difference there is. And I mean, some of it is just simple stuff like priority. Like, this is my priority, it's number one, I wake up thinking about it, and it's not your priority, and so, you know, you're not going to take as much responsibility, and that there's nothing toxic about that. That's just what life looks like. And so over time, doing this in practice, I've come to appreciate different flavors of leadership. And we have different models that we can look to, you know. So the model of the boss who is trying to maximize profit and minimize benefits to the employees is one model that is pretty well known in our pop culture. But there's many other kinds of leadership too. There's the leadership of hospitality, which says, I'm having a dinner, who would like to come? Can I make you comfortable and sit you down and feed you and host a good conversation? That's a kind of leadership too. And it, I personally, I don't resonate with this idea of servant leadership either, because I don't want to be anyone's servant. But the hospitality leadership really gets me going, this idea that we have different roles, there's host and guest, and that's actually a really healthy, thriving, positive, constructive, nurturing thing. And my resolution to that dilemma is simply to focus on this pointy thing called domination and coercion. And I'm happy to lead all over the place so long as I'm not dominating or coercing others.
I can add a little bit also. Because working in a government, in a very high level of the government, we do have a lot of power, and we also deliberately let go of our power in a way we don't really give any comments. And we always serve all the ministries and all the ministers in terms of whatever they ask. So the thing is, they have to ask for help before we help them. So this way of cracking to the government, I guess, is kind of a new way we think that could work instead of giving really strong comments. And after some time, we discover it's also the same phenomenon. Some people don't really want to work so much or pay responsibilities, but we discovered a term or framework. It's called stakeholder responsibility. So in terms of letting go of the leadership, sense of leadership, sense of ownership to your work, you actually work collaboratively as stakeholders to each other. So you could be a leader, could be a servant, could be a collaborator. There are several roles that government officials or employees can play, and we don't have to look at them in different hierarchies, but just in terms of what kind of personality they want to contribute to a team. And there's also an article about stakeholder responsibility that you can easily find if you search it. And I found it really helpful when we really hand off all the ownership to power in our team. Yes.
Can I add a comment? I just want to acknowledge that the three of us kind of staged an intervention and hijacked the session that Ollie had planned. And I just wanted to say Ollie's been tremendous to just let us run wild for a second, and generally through the whole time from yesterday and today, I've really appreciated your hosting
Thank you for
and
your
holding.
tolerance.
So
Yeah.
I want to say thanks to you.